So tonight's show, David, we have kind of a, I don't know what words to use, but for some this is going to be a touchy subject, just to be honest with you. For some of you, you're going to shake your head or nod your head and say, yeah, I've been there, or I've seen it. But hopefully all of you, by the end of this show, will feel empowered. And what we're talking about tonight is domestic violence. We're not just talking about domestic violence versus a child, versus a woman. We're also talking about domestic violence that affects everyone, okay? A lot of folks, David, when they think of domestic violence, they think of people just getting beat up. But sadly, it goes way beyond that. It goes far beyond that. You know, you start getting into things like physical trauma, of course, but psychological, mental traumas does affect every person around you. Just maybe don't realize it.
Our guest would be Laura Finnila. She is a victim of domestic violence, and she has 2 books out describing her experiences with such, and we're going to be talking to her about the stuff she went through and what others can do to get out of the situation.
When I heard her story a few weeks ago, it really touched me because so many times in our lives we think that we're stuck and we think we're trapped and you know, we got stuff that's happening to us and you know, we think we have no control, but she's living proof, and you'll meet her here in a few minutes, but she's living proof that you do have.
Lori?
Hi, this is Lori. Is this Justin and David?
Hey, Lori.
Yes,
hey, David, I have a cold too, so I'm really sorry if I have to turn my head away from the phone. I'm on decongestant and like half a bottle of cough medicine, and I have a box of tissues here. I said, I'm not missing the show. There's no way. So I think I've dosed it down as low as it'll go for a little while, but I really was coughing a lot today. I didn't talk the whole day because there's no way I was going to cancel. So I love how you guys opened up the show, though. It makes it so easy for me.
You know, again, this isn't a story that we hear often because a lot of times this kind of stuff isn't reported. And it really is a good thing that, you know, not only did you have the courage to get yourself through all this, and of course we'll get into that a little bit, but also to have the courage to stand up and say, look, you guys can do it too. You can do it. If I can do it, so can you.
I never thought I'd be out here talking about it. Let me tell you right now, I'm very, very private. And I've never even told my best friends years ago things about my life that I'm talking about now on my website. But I don't know. It's just, I think it's a matter of survival. It just hits you one day. You're either going to live or you're not. And then when you are living and you're kind of, I call it intermission, you're not exactly being hit, but like you guys had talked about, there's the emotional trauma still. And I still get stalked, but I actually had to learn how to incorporate living a routine life with still having him around even after everything he did to me, because legally you're just not protected in so many areas, and I found I was giving up my life. I would get up some days and feel like my life was completely washed away. We're talking about 15 years. I gave up modeling and acting because this man just wouldn't let me go. And, excuse me, that was extremely hard for me because that was my life. That was my inner salvation, my inner being. That was an escape for me right there from other things in the past. So, you know, psychologically, that was really difficult. I was never going to face that I had to give that up. So basically what I was doing is just from one day to the next realizing that, my God, I'm getting older, a lot older, and I'm still dealing with this guy, and he's preventing me from accomplishing anything in my life, you know, and I was trying so hard to hide it from my son, you know, as it was going on around me. I wasn't going to mention him too much, though, but so that's when I really pushed, and I started, you know, I tried to think of anything that I could do, because I was still pretty injured. I have a brain injury, so I think you guys know that. But I started trying to write a book back in 2001, and it was just a mess, you know. It was just trying to get through it. And my son was homesick a lot. I had to homeschool him, so I had to put that on hold, but it really was a mess anyway. So I picked up again on that in 2004, and there was a publisher interested in it, but I wasn't ready to talk about anything. It was just too difficult for me. So then when my son got better and went back to school in, I think it was 2007, I finished it, got it published in 2008, and then there seemed to be a lot of questions about my brain injury, and I just wanted to, you know, get it over with. So I wrote a book up on that in 3 days. And then I found all my writing kept turning romance to violence, romance to violence. It was like every other page was, you know, something violent. And I thought, this is horrible. I've got to get out of this mode, you know, because Harlequin's never going to accept my writing. But it was just, you know, some days I'd get pounding on my windows, pounding on my door. he actually followed me from the East Coast to every state and every city that I ever went. And it seemed like he was moving in because, I mean, he would drive by in his truck. When I would leave one state and go to another, at one time he even drove by with a U-Haul and smiled at me to show me he had moved there. Or maybe he was just there for a short period, but he just would never talk. And, you know, when my son was real little, he tried to actually break the door down. And I don't know how he got the door open, but he always could get in the keyhole, and I didn't know how to put up padlocks. I was really ignorant, you know, I wasn't like hardware oriented. So I'd have these chains going from my doorknob to my bathroom where you have those towel rods that are sealed in there, and he'd be, you know, pushing on those. And yeah, and the more I'd call the police, the worse my life would get. He would actually turn around, and he had social services at my door. I mean, we're talking at least 3 different times. And, you know, I mean, my place was fine there, but at one place that I moved to, it wasn't that great because I was taking it so bad from him and his friend trying to break in all the time. I was getting really sick, like the emotional turmoil you were talking about, and my brain was just turning off and on really badly. And so half the time I could barely get off the floor to even get to the door to call in time to, you know, report them. And then I'd call and they'd say, well, you know, they have to be there, you have to see them. And most of the time the ruckus would be at nighttime. Right. And I had no legal recourse. And, you know, with a brain injury, half the time I look like a babbling idiot anyway. They couldn't understand what I was saying. And so at the very beginning, I went into a coma, too, when I had my son. He was in there and attacked me. So at the very beginning, I was completely helpless because I made no sense. And I was so scared he was going to get my baby because he just came out of a drug rehab. And he had a lot of friends, though. I mean, he had a gun, you know, and it was licensed. Right. And he had a ton of friends, you know, and I had no one, and nobody was going to listen to me, so I ran. That was what I did, you know. I mean, I kept going from, you know, state to state, and he didn't always find me right away, but it was enough for my child to grow up at least away from the drugs that he was in, and, you know, like he states today, I did him a big favor because he's so great, you know, he's so talented and smart, and I always had to second guess if I was doing the right thing. But in my situation, the safest thing for me was to just keep moving. I mean, it was about every year or two, and it would take him a while before he would actually catch up, and sometimes enough to be annoying anyway, because he would run out of money, I think. But yeah, so that's what I did, and and I would try not to leave a trail. I mean, I went through the trouble to make sure I didn't leave any forwarding addresses with electric companies, phone companies. It really does work. I don't know, it might sound paranoid, but when you're in the position and, you know, these guys, some of them, they really know how to get into computers, and they have friends, places, and he had a lot of friends. He was supposedly an ex-cop. He said, no, I don't know, because, I mean, he told me all kinds of things, and he was doing drugs. He was smoking pot that was laced with heroin or something. So, I mean, you know, the stories he could have been telling me obviously may have not been true, but he just seemed to have connections somehow. So it was really, really difficult for me to get away from him.
Let's back up and let's talk about, you were talking about you had an inner struggle where you were second-guessing yourself. My guess is that at some point in time, this episode is going to be heard by a woman who is second-guessing herself, or a man.
I hope so much.
My guess is that they're going to be out there and they're going to hear this. Yeah. What would you say to a woman who thinks, or anybody, I keep saying woman like it's mostly, but you know, it is 85%. What would you say to a person that thinks they may be in an abusive relationship and they have that, well, is this abusive or is this not? Should I leave? Should I stay? What should I do? Am I doing the right thing?
Well, talk to somebody first of all. And if you get a negative response, then talk to somebody else. Because I got negative responses in the past about other situations in my life. And that's why I held everything in, because I just didn't want to hear it again. And you do. I mean, I actually was counting the number of times I was hit to try to tell myself, well, that wasn't enough to call it, you know, to be a big deal. You know, I just felt I didn't fit into any category. And, you know, you get that first hit, it actually takes control away from you. Now, there's a lot of people that will hit once, and we hope that they don't hit again. And maybe that situation's out there. We don't want to think that just because somebody loses their temper once, they're going to do it again. Maybe they could get counseling or something. But definitely twice, that's enough. You don't need a third. And I actually found myself doing that. And if there were years in between, I thought, well, he's not doing anything, so this is good, right? But the thing is, it's, after the second time, I suggest, that you, even the first time, you should talk to somebody to make sure you're okay, that it doesn't go any further than that. But just don't not talk. That's the worst thing you can do, because that's what I did. We're talking for years by myself, running from this man, because when I would reach out, I'd reach out to the wrong people, and they would just say negative things. Some were guy friends of mine. They weren't sympathetic to me. And I guess a lot of guys I was friends with, they had wanted to date me, and they felt scorned, and when I needed them, they weren't there. And, then I got scared people were going to get hurt because he was really violent. I didn't want to get anybody involved, so I just stopped calling people. But, even if it's not your friends or your family, there are support. Well, the cyberspace makes it easier, because I had no way to get in touch with anybody. I was so terrified I wouldn't even answer my phone because he would call and hang up so many times. But I think because we have computers now, even if you have to go to a library, I searched and found so many different groups and organizations and women out there that are so strong. Diane Wentendorf, oh my God, I admire this woman tremendously. Susan Milano, I love her. And she's gone through similar experiences, worse, I feel, than I had. And I didn't think anybody went through anything worse than me. These women are so empowering. Susan has been on Oprah, CNN. If I could do half of what she's done, I feel elated. Like I did one show prior to this. I felt like I had just done a movie, like I had been rebirthed. And that might sound funny to somebody else, but I felt myself again alive, and it's just reaching out to somebody, like I said, even if they're a stranger might be better, and, that's what I would suggest.
Do you care if Justin and I put in 2 cents in the hat here on this one? One time is a big deal, okay? And it's like an iceberg, There's a little bit showing above the surface, and then there's a big body below that you can't see. If you get hit, what you're seeing is the visible part of the iceberg. There's a whole lot of stuff underneath it. So when he says, okay, or she says, okay, I won't do it again, usually they're just trying to suppress that visible part, but they don't ever do the work required to go underneath and root out the underlying reasons why they feel it is acceptable to be abusive. So one time is enough to seek help. And if you find yourself hitting someone else, it is your responsibility to go find that help for yourself. You say,
right. I
have an anger problem. I don't know how to deal with certain things. It comes out in this way, and I don't want to do this again. I need help not to. And I'm talking about talking to a counselor type person. But you need to, if you're doing this to other people, you need to seek help yourself. If someone is doing that to you, then you need to make sure that they seek help for those underlying problems, because if those are not resolved, sooner or later it will resurface.
I kind of apply it to just about everything. For example, if I'm walking down the street and somebody hits me, even if I don't know that person, that's unacceptable to me. So why would I allow somebody, that loves me or is close to me or knows me or is related or whatever to hit me as well? Again, I try not to put too much on it, because it's easy. Again, it's easy for me to say, get out of there, or it's easy for me to say, get help and stuff. And I think what both of you are saying is very, very good advice. I'm just kind of looking at it from, actions speak louder than words. Without getting into too much of it, I know a few people who have escaped this type of thing, and I don't want to say who or what, because it might cause some issues. Basically, it took them a long time. It took them a long time to just get out, and it goes to what, like you and I were talking about, David. It's more than just the hitting. It's many of these people are financially dependent on these people. Many times they may not have any family or friends around them to help them. because this person has completely cut them off from everybody and everything around them, so that in a sense, the only person that exists is that person that's doing the beating. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot easier for me to say than it is for some of these folks to do.
Can I say one thing,
Sure.
Justin? I think sometimes because in my experience, I know, and I can think back now, I couldn't think of the time, once you're hit, it's like a drug. It just overtakes you, and it holds you until that next hit. It can hold you for a year. It can hold you for a couple of years. And I think sometimes, let's say the man or the woman wants control, you know, and they come down and they do it to you again because they can see that you're getting a little bit too strong. That's been my experience for what I've seen and with myself. It just seems like whoever wants to control you, that's kind of how they're doing it. And like I said, I don't know if the endorphins in our brain just go the wrong way, but they seem to do something that maybe, too, if there was any prior abuse, that's a possibility. But, you know, it's harder to get out that way, yeah, because it just starts again, and you just, you know, you freeze and you go along with the pattern of it. And I really fear, you know, more for people like that, because some people, when they hit right away, it's like, don't you dare, and they're out that door.
Right.
That's the common response. But, you know, there's a lot of women out there that's not the response, and that's scary because those are the ones that are in it for years, and we have to figure out why. Why is this, you know?
Right.
They're, like you said, they're afraid. They're reliant on them. They have children, money. I mean, and, you know, and even after the years and years of abuse, and they're still there because they have the kids and whatnot, but the hitting has slowed down. You know, maybe this is the time for them to try to do something for themselves to get themselves a little bit stronger. Maybe they subdue the situation enough, and I'm not even saying they should stay there, you know. I mean, but, you know, I don't know how to tell these women to get away from those situations. Hopefully they still won't be with them, but at some point in time, after years and years of giving up their life, that they'll reach out and do something for themselves, not to give up their entire life and feel like they're too old or they're not good enough anymore, they're not pretty enough. You know, you can always look good and always do things, you know. I mean, God, I had no money for makeup. I was Miss living on Park Avenue, dating stockbrokers, where, you know, doing model shoots with Sonny Vodka Shot with Junie and Lennon. And then I'm with this man who does drugs, who's on welfare, and I have not, you know. So, I mean, and I'm thinking, how can I even relate to any of that again? I mean, there's just no way. I mean, I started getting expensive trials of anti-aging online. And I know this all sounds shallow, possibly, but, you know, it really helps for a woman to look good and feel good, to pull herself out of that rut. And, you know, as shallow as it might sound, it really helped me a lot. And I found talking to other people that they really, I mean, they look and feel better about themselves, and, you know, they're going towards other goals in their lives just to, you know, find other ways to get around, making yourself feel good, you know.
Right.
If you can't go back to college, just take one course. Go take a painting class. Just, you know, with me, I had nothing. I mean, no money. I had a pencil and a piece of paper, and I wrote. You know, I said, nobody's going to take this away from me. This is one thing I have. This is mine. You know?
Right.
And find something, you know. I mean, we had no money growing up anyway, so I'd play outside, you know, with the rocks. Those were my toys. I mean, we had the dolls and stuff, but, you know, we didn't have the expensive stuff. Just do something for yourself, you know. I mean, even go to the library and go online and try to make friends on there just to give you the boost to go out there and do something, you know. Dollar Tree has makeup. You know, anything really to make. I'm telling you, a little bit of makeup. I took a makeup course. I was a licensed makeup artist in Boston. A little bit of rouge on your cheeks.
That doesn't sound shallow at all to me.
Oh, good.
Me either.
There are levels to a being. You know, we're all made up of, you know, physical, mental, spiritual, however you want to break it down. There's parts to your being. A lot of times people get down in a rut and they can't get out. There's a cliche that says every fool needs a rainbow. That means if you have no goal, if you have nothing to look forward to, a lot of times you'll get sunk down in the mud of depression and despair and all that stuff. So something like getting your hair done, your nails done, that kind of stuff, it can definitely change the way you feel enough to where you can think clearly enough to analyze the situation and use those critical thinking skills and make the necessary decisions that you have to make. Whereas the haircut made the difference of being able to think clearly or not. I know it sounds weird, but, you know, there's psychological principles in there.
I appreciate that you guys see that. Even cut your own hair. I cut my own hair. Get the nail polish at the Dollar Tree. I can't push the Dollar Tree enough. And you know, I used to feel so guilty even spending $2 on myself, but I knew in the long run it was going to pull me through emotionally and make me a stronger person, and I would get through that next day. And, you know, when you have to face that guy again for whatever reason, it's not quite so bad. You can stand up for yourself a little bit. You know, I mentioned on my blog, some women have to deal with these guys, you know, when they come pick up the kids and whatnot. It might have just been emotional abuse that drove them crazy.
Right.
But if you put ammunition on yourself, like you make yourself look good, or you know you're doing something that day or the next day, or you're working on something, you won't even notice, you know, what he may be trying to do to you or she might be trying to do to you. You know, they might be trying to bring you down or say bad things towards you, make you feel badly. You just don't notice that as much. And I guess that's with anything, but, you know, having to deal with that same person that may have done even worse things to you. I mean, they can even have, you know, hit you and done horrible things, and legally, I think after they've done whatever they have to do, the court has appointed whatever on time they serve or fines, whatever, you still have to deal with these people, which is horrible. Yeah.
Sure. I would probably argue that at times is worse than dealing with them while they're abusing you.
Oh,
you know,
God.
Because there's always that, we never forget. We never forget anything that happens to us, especially, you know, people tend to remember things more when they're either extremely bad or extremely good.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when these things are happening to you, it certainly does rehash everything that made you feel horrible.
Yeah, you relive it over and over again. Yeah.
Sure, even when they're not around. But when they're standing right there, they're looking at you, it's got to be 10 times worse.
Yeah, I used to pop up at night scared,
It's a lot like, there are ways to, and I hate to use this word brainwashing, but I'll use it because I can't think of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
You know, terms like brainwashing, re-education, you know, things like that we've heard throughout history, these things are done through progression.
Mm-hmm.
So your first step is to physically torture or physically destroy somebody. First you break down the body. Once you stop breaking down the body, then you move in, and now you're gonna play good cop, bad cop with them. You're gonna be the destroyer, but now you're gonna come in, and now you're gonna save them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Munchausen disease. I used to say that about mine all the time. Oh my God, yes.
And you're gonna come in. You're gonna save them. Then you're gonna gain their confidence. Okay.
Oh my
now
God,
what you're going to do from there, what you're going to do is you're going to start to manipulate, not with beating them up. You might a little bit just to keep them in line, okay, but you're going to start doing these things psychologically and mentally, and you're going to start rearranging their life for them.
Yeah.
And eventually, this man, woman, or child is going to be your slave, basically, and they're going to feel powerless because, in a sense, you stripped everything away from them. So.
Right.
What would be a person's motivation for wanting to do that to another person?
Another rabbit hole that goes a million miles deep, Dave. You know, it could be things like, for some reason they feel like they need to control somebody to the point where they are God in a sense, and that nothing happens to that person or nothing is given to that person unless they say so, for whatever reason. And again, that could go on forever. We can try to speculate. I think it just depends on what the person has had happen to them in their life.
Would you say fear, insecurity, and feelings of inadequacy would make someone do that?
I'd say those are probably the three big ones. Yeah.
Okay.
All rolled up in a neatly little package that really screws you up and causes you to do these things to other people. What these folks are doing, David and Lori, they're not. And honestly, many of them may not be doing it on purpose at first, or they may not even know they're doing it. But in a sense, they're simply trying to get this person so submissive that they are going to look to no one else but them for everything.
They just see that they want their way, yeah.
I mean, the hitting thing is obvious, right, David? I mean, if someone's hitting on you, it's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
You know somebody's beating on you. You know somebody's hitting you or throwing stuff at you But there's some other warnings, you know, there's some other things that go on here that maybe we can tell people about that aren't so obvious.
Yeah, I didn't have that right off.
Right, it was more like, you're worthless without me, you know, you wouldn't be able to...
Yeah. He didn't even say anything to me, it's just weird, but I'll go ahead.
Maybe you can take us through some of these things, you know, looking back now, some of these things that weren't so obvious to you, but now maybe are more obvious. Maybe you can take us through some of these things so folks can know what other things to look for rather than hitting.
Sure. My situation was a little different, though. I had already had a mild brain injury, and I was a little out of it, and I guess my over-humbleness or my insecurities or my helpless look on my face is what got me into trouble. I noticed after my mild injury that, the guys that I used to date, they felt like they were taking advantage of me because I just wasn't in the right state of mind at that time, and the guys that were coming towards me were the bad guys. So I just stopped dating altogether, and this man who moved in on me, I really didn't have any control over it, and I could feel that things were wrong. He just kept showing up at the wrong place. He was being very pushy. He would actually barge in between people that I would be with and try to take over conversation, try to just move into my life everywhere I went. And I had been going to the police because I knew something was wrong in my life. I just could feel like I was being followed. I felt like someone had been around where they shouldn't be, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then this man just moved on me and just completely took control of me in ways that were so humiliating because I had a brain injury. I really couldn't push him away in the way that he wanted me. And so I was just his, and he made me his. And I was so shocked from the treatment of what he did to me to get me, just kind of taking me in physically. And I'm assuming other women weren't injured like me, so, they probably is strong enough to. If somebody's pushing themselves on you in the first place, just walk away. You don't need anybody that bad, first of all. I walked away at least 3 or 4 times, and he just kept following me. And like I said, I got so tired because he would talk so fast around me in circles that my brain would turn off. And then the next thing you know, he's, next to me physically, and then next to me physically more than I want, and then next thing I'm his girlfriend, and sadly to say, I couldn't fight any of it because my brain would turn off so much. I think I was so scared and shocked that it would just freeze, and half the time I wasn't even there. I was just kind of in another world because that's what my brain would do ordinarily. And so he took advantage of that. Where other guys wouldn't, he did. So I would say just as soon as you feel uncomfortable, leave. You don't need anybody in your life like that. Believe me, you don't, because it's so much worse. I'm so much better with a man not in my life after everything I've been through. And I'm not saying I don't welcome a nice guy. I would love for that day to come. But I am so much better off.
No, you're...
Is that answering it okay? Did that get clear enough?
In your book, My Brain Injury?
Yeah.
Would I be right in saying you didn't just receive a brain injury in a car wreck or nothing like that? This was done to you?
Well, I had a routine surgical procedure in 1990, and the anesthesiologist was a resident. He lied and said he was the chief, and it was too late. He already had me strapped down. I don't know if it's a sedative, but he gave me something through my arm, and he didn't check the pressure on the thing on the wall, the mask that they put on your face. The nurse told him to check it. He said, "Oh no, it's fine." The pressure was way too high, so it blasted me away, and I couldn't talk and tell him because he just did everything so fast, and the doctor wasn't in there. So I had a very mild brain injury, and it does show up in an EEG. But so I was kind of lackadaisical, and I worked a lot in New York. Though after that, I did the most acting, that I had ever done because all my inhibitions were gone. I was just happy and free. But unfortunately, I had to go back home, and that kind of had seemed to be where my problem stemmed from. And this guy had been stalking me, apparently. He knew me through somebody, and I had no idea until he actually got up to my face. And that's when he got a hold of me, and he wasn't going to let me go back to New York, and he didn't let me go back. And I wanted to just get home, take care of things that I had to take care of medically, and get right back out there because I was doing really good. I had people that were sending me out for a lot of extra work, and I just, people were really being responsive to me. So I never planned on having, someone do that to me. And when I wake up on Sundays through the 15 years of it all, or maybe more, you get horrified and shocked. You can't believe that your life's been taken away from you like that. And because I had a child, it helped a little bit. But when my brain started clearing up even a little bit more, because my son went back to school to give my brain a chance to really heal a bit, it's kind of hard when I have to think all the time. I started to be able to work on myself, and I said, if I look back now, I'm just not going to ever do anything with my life, and the pain's going to be too much. So Oh, you wanted me to get into the fact about how I got permanently brain injured. I apologize. See, I skipped over that. What happened is I got beat up. Him and a friend, they beat me up. He wouldn't let me leave the building. I got hit really hard on the head. I heard my skull crack. I got pushed down a flight of stairs. I guess they found that I was pregnant. And then I got hit in the face. I didn't go to the hospital, but there were arrests and restraining orders and stuff like that, and it didn't go through because I didn't get the slip on the door, apparently, and the victim's advocate didn't call me, so nobody went to jail for that, which made my life even worse because that's why they followed me, because they weren't scared. But he came into the hospital right after I had my son, and he actually attacked me. I was already in a light coma because my body just couldn't handle having a baby, and medically they didn't treat me properly for a brain injury. They tried to force me deliver on Pitocin, and my brain wasn't sending the signals to my body to dilate, so they were killing me and the baby. My baby had to be resuscitated. So I had really bad medical care to begin with. I don't know how he got in there, but they wheeled me to some back corner to keep me safe or something. I had been complaining to the police so many times, and they didn't do me any favors because he got in there. He was threatening me, scaring me. I know whatever he did, it hurt a lot when he put his hands on me. He ripped all the IVs out of me. And I guess it was medicines to keep me going, and it was long enough to send me into a deep coma. So I was in a deep coma for about 6 hours, and they had a priest come in, and they figured I was dead because my vital signs were so low, and I had a brain injury, but I really wasn't. So they just unplugged me, and they had a specialist come in and try to pull me out. It's very, very painful. But they tried to do everything they could, and I bounced up out of nowhere, and I was blue, and the nurse was surprised, and I made it through, but because of it, I have a permanent brain injury now. You're just not the same after all that. You can't be hit on the head when you already have a brain injury and then go into a coma for 6 hours. I mean, you're going to lose more oxygen. So, it was infallible that I was going to go through. So that's how I got the brain injury.
Before we get any further, David, I wanted to kind of talk about some of these other signs. We were talking about why do people do this kind of thing. I would think for the most part, something inside them, makes them feel like they need to have absolute power, control over this person or group of people or whatever. We talked about the economic side of it. I've seen this stuff firsthand, and Lori, you can chime in if you want to. Preventing your partner from getting a job or keeping a job. I had next door neighbors just recently where the wife would get a job because the husband didn't want to work and he was demanding, that she make money. And as soon as she'd get a job, he would start calling there and start causing problems, and she'd get fired. And this happened probably 15 times in the span of 1 year.
Okay.
Here's another one, David, that kind of goes along with that control and that re-education piece that we were talking about. Teaching your partner to ask for money. Always ask for money. Never let him or her have any money of their own, but they have to come to you and ask for it all the time.
Oh, gosh.
Right? Giving that person an allowance.
Oh, my God.
I can tell you right now, if I told my wife she had an allowance to follow, she would all she would do is start laughing at me. She'd just start laughing because if anything, I'm the one who has the allowance, but that's because I'm horrible with money.
You're a good guy. That's fine.
Well, that's because I'm horrible with money. I'd rather have her hold on to it. But these are these little things that go into keeping somebody in check. We live in a world made out of money. You can't do anything a lot of times without money. So that's one thing. Any thoughts on that, David?
I was coughing. What did you say?
You're fired.
No, he was just talking about how the control is like putting someone on an allowance, and
putting people on an allowance.
Yeah.
Right, making them ask for money, things like that, David. That kind of goes along with the part of the economic piece. Do you have any comments about that stuff?
Not in particular. I know that it's a really bad situation when a woman finds herself out in a cold, strange world where nobody cares about them, and they are financially dependent upon a male. They have nowhere to move to. They're looking at being homeless. They have possibly kids that were formed within the relationship, and they know that they have to be accountable to the courts as to being a fit parent. if it goes to court,
right.
the guy's going to say, well, she don't even have a house, you know.
Big one, David. It's using children.
Mm-hmm.
So many, yes. I mean, and guys, just be fair out there. This happens to both men and women, and these little things are really powerful when you mix them with the physical and emotional abuse. So making somebody feel guilty about the children, using the children as a guilt trip, using the children as little messengers. So you're going to fight through your children. You're going to give them a message and tell them that, go upstairs, tell your mother I said this and this and this.
Well, Lori was very fortunate, and she mentions that he tried to take the kid. Did he ever try to go through the courts to get the kid?
Oh no, he has such a bad record between drug use, and he was running from 4 different child support payments already, or maybe 1.
So
he had 3 other kids that she supposed was going after him too, but no, he would just make the babies and not pay for them. So he had a really bad track record. He couldn't do anything legally, so he tried to do everything illegally.
But they will try.
Yeah, so he figured he'd just take them, because I think possession is something. If you have the child on you, he probably could have done something that way. So he had figured he just grabbed them and went with them, yeah. But his name wasn't on the birth certificate. But, I mean, I'm sure there was something that he would have been able to do if he could have grabbed him. And I really wanted him involved. I didn't remember half the things that he did anyway. I mean, I was just like, I thought if something happened to me, I wanted his name on the birth certificate, and I really wanted to make it work. Even after everything, I'm still willing to make it work. But I don't know. I just couldn't reach him. It was like he was this crazy person or something, He would just drive by me and not talk to me. And I thought, what am I supposed to do? I mean, even when I was running in my brain injury, I talk about, I ran. I even camped for a year with a 3-year-old, okay? I mean, things were that bad. Yeah. Well, I was living in a really bad place where they were doing drugs, and he was across the street all the time, and he was just always around. And I knew I had to get me and my child out of there, because it just seems like he'd move in where I was, and he was the man, and everybody liked him. And, maybe the drug use got worse then because we could smell it going up the stairs. But so I just got him out of there, and we started camping and whatnot. And he would follow me to the campgrounds, and I'd look out my window, and he would be there by the trees, messing around. I don't know what he was doing down there, planting things or something. And I would just see him, in weird places. I'd go to another state or another city, and I'm not kidding you, I'd see him right there. And he would never talk to me. Yet, we would lay down at nighttime to sleep, and you'd hear smashing on your windows, smashing on your door. And I think now he was trying to drive me to go back home because he has so much pull there, and that's what made me leave. I was being hurt so bad that that's where I got really beat up, and he got into the hospital. I don't know how he got in there, and didn't even get arrested for it. Of course, I couldn't put 2 and 2 together right after for a while, but so I had no plans on going back there. But we're talking, let's see, he started following me when my son was about 1. We're talking now about 13 years. I haven't seen him recently, but I have seen him here where I live.
So in your home state where all your family
he still drives around, yeah. I mean, we're talking, he's all the way from the East Coast, though. And I came from California, like I bopped around to different states, and I've seen him here, too. So
would you have had any resources, any lines of to get help if you had went back home?
No.
Would it have been better?
Oh, God, no, it would have been worse, no. I didn't have anybody to rely on back there, really. I mean, my life was a little strange anyway. I mean, I had basically left kind of my home plate young and kind of distanced myself from a lot of people because I wanted to get away from, situations back there that, were just uncomfortable, too painful. I had some things happen back there. And so I wanted to just start a whole new life. And so I cut everyone off when things went down and went bad in me in New York. And so even if you go back and you rekindle these things, you're not the same people. You're not as close. You don't feel comfortable just moving in on people that don't really know you that well anymore. And these problems were just so much bigger than I felt anybody could handle. And I think that was what my problem was, is that I felt that it was too big for anyone. I couldn't handle it. Why would I want to put this off on somebody else? I mean, I knew what this man was capable of. And even beforehand, like I said, things were strange until he actually moved in. I was just really scared, and weird things were happening. And I just, I just didn't want to get anyone involved. I always had this weird feeling about, if something happened to somebody, I'd feel bad, and I'm sure it was things in the past, But no, I felt like I had no one. I'm trying to think if I did call. Like I said, I just called a few old friends, and I didn't get good responses, so I just felt that I was on my own. I think because I had a child, and I had a brain injury, and I didn't want to lose that child. I mean, I was really afraid because I did call, make a couple phone calls, and like I said, things would get worse for me. And I'm not trying to discourage somebody, but things would get worse for me because it would seem like the situation was turned around on me, and I was the bad person, and it seemed like I was trying to explain myself. And I thought, God, this is cruel, I mean, not only am I injured, and you're trying to keep your head straight, physically and emotionally, because, I mean, I had a real bad head. And, I knew I could take care of my child, and certainly better. I mean, I had to double think whether or not it was better for him to go somewhere else. Would he be safer to go with his father? And I really rethought about that, and I couldn't help but saying no at the end. So many different things in my mind. But I knew that I loved him. I knew that I loved that child more than anybody else could love him. And even if I might have a hard time getting across that floor some days, I did it for him, and I did what I had to do for him. Make a long story short, what was the initial? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think you covered it.
Good.
it. And that brings us into our next one. The minimizing, denying, and blaming. Just talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Hey, it's no big deal. I only slapped you this time. I didn't punch you. Minimizing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then either flat out denying it or turning it all around. I hit you because you made me hit you. You made me do this. It's your fault. And you just kind of touched on that. That's a huge piece of it. Generally, people are good people deep down. They don't want to do wrong by anybody. So if they feel like they're doing something wrong, and if they feel like they may be the ones getting smacked around or yelled at or screamed at or whatever, if they feel like they're to blame, you're just going to tighten that grip even further on them because now they want to try to make it right. Now they want to try to do good by you. And you kind of touched on that. Another one, David, is one that I think we talked about before the show, was isolation. Controlling what the person does, who the person sees, who the person talks to, what they're allowed to read, what they're allowed to watch on TV, watching everything they do outside of the home. And, big one, back to the emotional part of it, using jealousy as a tool to further that blame.
Right. You're talking to somebody, you're looking at somebody.
Right.
Yeah. I tried to date a little bit. I had that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm going to hit you because you made me jealous. Statements like that, it really does have a big impact, right?
Not on me. I would say you got a problem if you're jealous.
Well, again, it goes back to the situation. I've probably, in my course of my job, I've probably been witness to or been involved in 50 or 60 domestic violence issues with different couples and different people. And every single one of those were different. Of course, you had the hitting, the yelling. Sometimes it was sexual abuse was involved. But for the most part, every one of them were different based on what the person was saying or what the person was doing or what caused it.
The thing that disturbs me most about saying something like, you made me do this to you, you remember a few weeks back we talked about some training that you received? That kind of statement sets that person up. It splits them into two different interests. One of the interests was the part of themselves that violated some crime, and the other part of their self is part of them that has your interest at stake.
Right.
So you have divided them, and you've automatically got half of them on your side. They're outnumbered 2-1 already, and that is manipulation.
Yeah, and that's one of the subtle things that really helps you grab hold of someone. And it's really tough, David and Lori, because you don't even see it coming. It just, they're doing it, and you don't even see it coming. That manipulation is usually very, very subtle to the person involved because they've already gone through these different steps.
You should feel something, though, I think, unless you've already been through abuse and that succumbing could already be there. But you should feel something, or, I mean, I knew what was happening. I just couldn't stop it. But, hold on, I'm going to cough. I can't believe I'm holding out this long, but yeah, I think it's probably different with everybody. You know, it's probably it probably starts different with everyone. Some know, some don't. Some, you know, they're ignoring it because, like I said, that's the only way they know how to deal with things. So maybe, I don't know if that means something, you know, the different reasons why people end up in those situations. I don't know if it's something we could ever look at and, you know, try to attack and try to limit this, but that's something to look at, you know.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, you have one person that's trying to control another. So if you're
it's why we're reacting to it in these different ways. Yeah.
If you're in a relationship and there is a battle of wills, to where you have a will to go one way, and they have a will to go another way, and you're bumping heads, and one person is significantly stronger than the other, and just totally dominates them against their will.
Yeah.
That would be your clue right there that you're getting ran over.
If you've been hit before too, you're afraid because you can feel that power coming from that person too, and it's much easier, I think, to take somebody who's been abused before. You know, you don't want to go down that road again. You don't want to make a bumpy path for yourself. You're thinking, hey, it's better. You know, I can think of some instances you asked me, and this is a perfect response for, you know, what I would do. I was having a little bit of pain getting away from him one time before it got really bad, and you know what? I would have taken that pain any day now and left. It would have saved me 15 years, and I know I have my son. I'll never regret that, but 15 years of pain, I would have pushed. If you can get away, even if it's a little pain, just go, because I didn't want any more. Yeah, and yes, if I could change something, that's what I would have changed. I thought it would go away, stop. Eventually, I'd be able to get away from him.
So, Lori, it seems to me, with all these situations that I've been involved in, that I've seen, and that I've read and heard about, and even looking at your story, it seems like the hardest part of these situations is that moment that you decide to go, that moment you finally decide to break away. Can you kind of give us some insight on what that moment was like for you when you finally just had enough and you finally found the courage to break away?
My son. I did it for my son. I probably wouldn't have, I wouldn't have had the strength if it wasn't for him. And I feel bad. He was actually in the middle of it and completely involved. And, you know, I think of every day, how could I, have done this to him? There must have been some way I could have gotten away. But then that's saying you're regretting having him. And obviously I don't. But, I had him in a horrible situation. But my son, looking at him and his friends, the abuser and his friends were moving in on me very quickly. The atmosphere around me was changing very badly, and they're bad people he deals with. And I could see my very small child then, and I knew he was in danger, so I ran with him, and I knew, I had to think, I thought for about 2 minutes, maybe 3, and I knew I was making, I had no idea where I was going. I left everything, got rid of everything, and it's, you just know at that point, you've either had enough, it just hits you one day, or you're doing it for somebody else. I didn't have any respect for myself. So, it would have had to have been my son. I felt I actually deserved some of it. But my son didn't deserve any of that. So that's what helped me. It just hits you, either you've had enough, or your children, really, you do it for them.
Hey, Lori, what would you say to the people out there that might be inclined to look at women that are in abusive relationships and say, those women are just attracted to bad guys,
Oh, I know, I've gotten that.
They go after the trouble.
Problem, Lori, another problem. Here she is.
What would you say to those people that would say that?
I don't talk to them anymore.
Are they right?
You go to somebody else and you talk to somebody who gives you a positive feedback, because you're not going to get away if you don't, and you're not going to solve your problems that way. Right. You need positive feedback, and if you don't find it the first time or the 10th time, and I realize you're so afraid to get this information out there, it's going to get back to him. So you do want to try to go to reputable, people. Sometimes there's private people out there that have these groups and organizations, that have gone through it themselves, And like I mentioned, Susan Milano and Diane Wettendorf, they're on my site, at lauriefinnila.webs.com. And if you contact these people, I've had Diane tell me, if you ever need me, and I can't tell you what that makes me feel like. I mean, she has done so much research on domestic violence, and she has fought, Susan Milano has fought, for people. If you know there's good people out there and they have great track records, go to these people, because if you've only got that one or two phone calls or that one or two chances and you don't want to go around and tell everybody and it gets back to this man because you're so scared you're going to get beat up again. I mean, I was really scared who to tell because I didn't know when it was going to come back to me after a while. So, go to these really reputable, even private type of situations because they are out there.
Okay, so tell us about your books right quick. Throw some plugs out for your work there.
Which one? My Brain Injury or To All My Fathers?
Start at the top. Just give us a brief teaser there to make us want to buy the books, and then kind of hint around at that third work you got coming on the domestic abuse trilogy.
Well, they'll probably like My Brain Injury better because My Brain Injury it's nonfiction, and I did it once and I didn't look back because I talk about very embarrassing moments in there, but it was another one of my breaking out experiences, and I felt that if I was going to live through it, because I knew I was really sick and weak from being hurt so bad, and some days would be better than worse, and believe it or not, just from breaking out and talking about every single thing, I mean, physically I feel stronger and like I can do more. So the My Brain Injury, basically, it goes from the injury all the way through. It tells how I got it. I do talk about the domestic violence part of how I got it, but I talk about how I felt, how, the unfairness of being injured and having people look at you and judge you and, say horrible things, and you're treated like sometimes, a basket case, and it's just, it's kind of torture on top of torture, there's no justice sometimes, and sometimes, you just got to get it out. And so I got it out. I put it down exactly how I felt. But at the end, I told how, I found myself. Hey, if people aren't going to like me for who I am today because I'm too injured or I have too many problems following me or I did this wrong or that wrong, you know what? In my isolation, I found myself and I found a way to like my new self because I wasn't the same, obviously, after I'm brain injured. I have things that go off in my head and I get lost in conversations and I lose blocks of information and the words that come out of my mouth don't always match what I'm trying to say. So I don't look like a pretty picture in that way anymore. I learned to rebirth and love myself all over again. So that's a happy thing. And To All My Fathers, that really was just a collaboration of a lot of things I had to get out and put down on paper. And I was actually going through the abuse as I was writing it, and I was darned if I wasn't going to get it done. So, you've got one good line and another line that sounded horrible. So what I did is I just went right into it. And as he was doing things, I'd fit it into a story and kind of make a dragon with wings, so to speak, where I had to make it fiction because there was too much intensity. And so I kind of entwined my whole road of abuse in that book into kind of a fictional thing. But I've been told it's really good. It's very intense. I've been told some people couldn't handle reading it. It does. I don't hold back when I write, because of my brain injury, I was kind of cheating in a way writing. My next book is more artsy. It is more, I don't have very many good days to write. When I do, I just go at it, and I do really, really well. And, my friend Nat, my best friend, she's listening to the show, and she really encouraged me big time, and she's an avid reader of very good authors, and she really likes this last book. So I'm actually starting to write like a normal writer and not just, bringing in everything in my life, which is what I had done the first two books. But if you can handle intensity, like I said, my brain injury, it can be a little sensitive, but the end is happy. And To All My Fathers, it's very tense all the way through. So I'll be honest with you.
The book you have coming up, you're still working on it.
Yeah,
right?
The Virtuous Woman. Yeah, my publisher's great. They took 1, 2, and it seems like they'll take anything I write, so I'm really happy. But I kind of was going to try like a Harlequin or a Random House because it's really kind of, I actually have some passionate in there. But once again, it's kind of twisted passionate where it's, there's always got to be something a little bit going on in the background. But I'm really kind of surprised at how well it's coming out. But I am going to try a little bit more of a publisher where I can get a little bit more media. But I'm happy where I'm at. I finished them. They're out there. I actually got through one book, which is a miracle. So I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased about that. And now I'm out here and I'm doing this, and never ever thought I would do anything like this. I would love to even if it was once a week, come in and help, co-host a domestic violence, somewhere, and try to look up new information and new things to add to it. Maybe sometimes if someone's afraid, they'll call in privately and we could help them, or at someplace. That would be another thing I'd like to do. Reach out, have something. But that's where I'm at right now. And I really, really enjoyed this. I hope I was able to give some good, feedback on my life, and maybe, some kind of spiritual uplifting out there.
It's not a pleasant thing. People do not want to think about this. They would rather pretend that it doesn't happen. But there are some parts of this world that is not nice. That is not pleasant to think about. And that's what raising awareness for this kind of stuff is all about, to get people to realize that some people's world is in shambles because of things that people that should be loving them does to them. So we enjoyed having you on, and
thank you so
appreciate
much.
You coming out.
We did. Good luck to you.
Oh, thank you. All right, thanks, David. Thank you, Justin.